Good Wednesday evening. Welcome to Overtime here on WOTM. I am Gerhard Mathangani, joined by our expert researcher / historian Mark Everett Kelly. We've got a lot to dive into. Some news with the Atlanta Braves. Also Pro Day at Alabama today and the NCAA tournament. But first, Mark, we hadn't seen you in a couple of weeks. You got a chance to get back home.
Yep. Back
to New York, first time in a long time. How was the Big Apple?
Yeah, it was good, man. It was good to be home.
Yeah.
I hadn't been there for a couple months and see family and everything.
Yeah.
So I did miss being here, though. So I got some roots now down here.
Right.
So it was good to get back, but it's always something special about being home.
Absolutely, 100%. We're glad to have you back and glad you got a chance to see some familiar faces back up north. Speaking of familiar faces, we have a lot of them in the NCAA tournament. The Blue Bloods are back in. Of course, the big matchup this week at the Final Four on Saturday, Duke and North Carolina. They've met a bunch of times, over 200 times in the regular season, the ACC tournament and somewhat. However, in the NCAA tournament, not once. And here they'll meet in Coach K's final season on Saturday in the Final Four. Number one, your thoughts on just the magnitude of this matchup and being able to have this in Coach K's last season at the Final Four.
We got two classic teams here. All right, the ACC is pretty much been known as the best conference college basketball-wise. Overall, you have the SEC in Kentucky. They've done some great things. The Big Ten, obviously. But the ACC at Tobacco Road, that's been like the standard for college basketball because of coaches like Dean Smith and especially Coach K. You know, when Jimmy V, remember how big Jimmy V was, and he was, the 83 team. So there have been special teams. Dave Odom, when he was at, when he had Tim Duncan, Wake Forest. So there have been a lot of great players, Jordan, Worthy, you name it. Duke and North Carolina, there's no better scenario that we could imagine for Coach K than to go out playing his historic rival in a Final Four. The funny thing is that game at the end of the year, the final game for Coach K at home, North Carolina had won, I believe, 5 straight going into that game, and they kind of start to turn their season around after being like middle of the pack for most of the ACC season, and then they've just taken off there. Now, they did lose in the ACC tournament to Vatech, but Vatech, they fell flat on their face in the NCAA tournament. And I don't want to say North Carolina got a break by St. Peter's, because Murray State had that same break, Kentucky had that same break, and Purdue had that same break, and they couldn't get it done. North Carolina did. There was something I sensed about them after they beat Duke, but I was too chicken to take them to go places in the NCAA tournament. And they really have proven themselves with the way they played. That game down there in Duke, they were losing. North Carolina, 41-39 at half. In the second half, they held Duke to 42% shooting, 16 for 38, including 4 for 13 from three-point range. Outscored them 55-30, 55-40, shooting almost 60% from the field. That kind of got them going on this tournament run, even though they did lose in the ACC tournament.
Exactly, and it's like you said, it's a crazy, insane matchup, and it's a crazy, insane matchup given the backdrop of Coach K's last season. And we'll go to the Coach K element of this. He obviously has crazy history, over 1,200 wins overall. Obviously, not only a first-round Hall of Famer, or first ballot Hall of Famer, but at the same time, too, one of the icons of the coach. You cannot tell the story of college basketball without telling the story or having Mike Krzyzewski big part of that. How much of this run do you kind of give him credit for understanding it is his last team, or is his last team last season, and still being able to keep his team focused here in the biggest dance?
Now, growing up, Coach K was pretty much in the Final Four almost every year.
For sure, yeah.
All right, he was in the Final Four in '86. Beat Kansas national semifinal, wound up losing Purvis Ellison to Louisville in the final. '88 lost to Kansas and Larry Brown. They got their revenge. '89 lose to Carlos Simone Seton Hall. '90 beat Arkansas Nolan Richardson. '91 beating Tarkanian after getting blown out by him in the national championship game in '90. And '92 beating Bobby Knight in the national semifinals, and then beating Steve Fisher and the Fab Five in the finals. So he was used to being there early on. He's kind of taken breaks since then. 94, 99, 2001, 2004, 2010, 2015, and now 2022. He's won a bunch of championships. He's
Right.
won 5 championships, going for his 6th, 5-4 all-time in national championship games. But since losing to Seton Hall in '89, he's only lost 1 game in the national semis, and that was to UConn in 2004 and Jim Calhoun, who he also lost to in his championship game in '99.
Right.
And like I said, my friend Sam was convinced he just tossed that game. 79, 78, they lost to Emeka Okafor that year. But he's been almost unbeatable in the national semifinals. So to play North Carolina, get another chance, and to go out with a national title, there's no better scenario for him. Now, Hubert Davis could become the 2nd coach of all time to win a national title in his first season as head coach. Steve Fisher did in '89 with Michigan, but again, he took over when the tournament started because he was replacing Bill Frieder. Then you look at some other coaches. Ed Juker won in 1961 with Cincinnati, W. Smith in '98 with Kentucky, but they had coached a couple years. That was their first year at the school.
Right.
So he could be the 4th coach to win a title in his first year at the school, 2nd in his first year in coaching.
Exactly. So history, no matter what happens at the end of that 40 minutes in their national semifinal game. Meanwhile, head coach Mike Krzyzewski held a pre-Final Four press conference and talked a little bit about the continuation of the program after he leaves. It's John Shire that's stepping in.
The plan that we've had was for continuity of our program, not to get gifts, and it's worked. We have great continuity in our program with John taking over. What's happened in recruiting, not just this year, for next season, but for the following year. We've had great continuity. And in order to do that, I stayed on the job, and I still wanted to coach. So this wasn't about getting recognized, although that's what you get. That's what you get if you live in this neighborhood. And so I've never looked at it as last. I've looked at it as, I look at our program as a continuity.
Oh, meanwhile, we'll go to the other matchup between Kansas and Villanova. We've talked plenty of times before about how, you get to these matchups and you want to see a lot of these blue bloods. And now we have another chance to see a blue blood team like that. So you got a good Kansas team at the same time. Villanova team that's been great, especially here lately.
Yeah, Villanova's a team that has won.
Yes, in my opinion, Villanova is one of those teams that, to me, they're peaking at the right time. They're playing really well at the right time. But at the same time, you have a good Kansas team that, for a good team, really they kind of floated under the radar. Everybody talked about Arizona. Everybody talked about Gonzaga. And everybody talked, obviously, about Duke and Baylor as the other number 1 seeds. Kentucky, or Kansas, to me, kind of rode underneath the radar.
And this is a rematch of 2018 when Villanova played Kansas in the national semifinals, wound up beating them. Villanova really didn't have much of a history in the Final Four before Jay Wright got there. Remember, they had only won that 1 title under Rodney Massimino in '85. They won in 2016. They won in 2018. Now they're back again with Jay Wright in 2022. So they've pretty much set the standard since 2016, beating North Carolina in that great national championship game with the almost like the half-court shot at the buzzer after North Carolina hit a great shot to tie the game. So most people recently think of Villanova and think of a team that has very good success in the NCAA tournament, including 2 titles since 2016.
That's exactly right. They also will lose Justin Moore, one of their starters, going down. It's a team that really does everything really well, so I don't know how much of an injury, how much of an impact that'll be. Do you think it'll be much of an impact having 15 points per game now not being able to play?
Well, Villanova's showing that they have resiliency. They have the ability to pick up when their key players don't play or aren't playing well. So, I don't think there's anything Jay Wright has not seen.
Right.
And Bill Self, the same thing. This is the 9th time Kansas has been in the Final Four since they went to 64 teams in 1985. Both these teams have a lot of experience, so they're not going to be shocked by anything that happens. They know how to make up for points missing, players missing, and all that. They wouldn't be here if they didn't know how to do that.
That's exactly right. You teed this one up perfectly because Bill Self, after he got off the bus today, landing in New Orleans, he talked a little bit about his history in the Final Four and how he'll help shape his team to get rid of all the distractions there in New Orleans.
Not that I've been here enough, but I've been here enough to know that there are some serious do's and don'ts, and you have to, just you care as much as you have to get here over a period of time, then you gotta be smart enough and care enough to do it for 5 or 6 more days if you're fortunate enough to win. So I think we'll be good. Enjoy it, have fun, soak it up, but there will be some strict guidelines within our within our team that the guys have to do.
Mark, we'll get to your predictions in just a bit, but first, as you said, the Blue Bloods are back, and you take a look at the teams that are in this year's Final Four. It really is the best of the best, especially here recently.
And we're talking 7 of the last 14 national titles have been won by one of these 4 teams. And these are classic teams. Villanova probably doesn't fit what a Duke, North Carolina, or Kansas does. They're not, Naismith, all-time great college basketball names at Villanova. You don't normally think of them in that aspect, but they've had so much success recently. Jay Wright's one of the best coaches in college basketball, so they belong there in that conversation. And obviously North Carolina, Duke, and Kansas, we're talking about historic teams. So this is a great way for Coach K to go out, and a great thing for college basketball to see at this time of year.
That's exactly right. And we're also talking about the great coaches, and for the final time, we'll see Coach Krzyzewski, whether it's 1 game or 2 games, and well, literally watching a living legend when you take a look at the other guys on this list.
People don't realize how great John Wooden was. I mean, he's a guy that had led UCLA to 10 NCAA Final Fours, countless national championships. He was the pinnacle for college basketball coaching. Now, I know Digger Phelps thought he did it with players, but it's so funny how Digger Phelps talks about John Wooden. It's hysterical. But Wooden was great. Krzyzewski, to pass him is just amazing, because nobody thought anybody would be able to reach Wooden. Krzyzewski did. Now, he's coached basically forever. I mean, I was 6 when Coach K got his coaching start. And he turned that whole Duke program around. Nobody really knew much about Duke, especially college basketball. He made a program there, and he turned ACC into big-time basketball. And he didn't have the Jordans. He didn't have the Worthies when he first came in. He had guys like Jay Billis and Mark Gallery and Johnny Dawkins. Now he's getting those guys like Jay Williams in the 90s, Corey Maggette in the 90s, and the guys now who have all the time he gets, McDonald's All-Americans. He built that whole program and set the standard for the guys like that to come and join his team because of what he accomplished at Duke.
That's exactly right. We'll get now to the predictions. Do you think he does it again? We have both games, both national semifinals. Who do you like on Saturday, and then who do you like in the matchup on Monday night?
I mean, it's still rare for a number 8 seed to make it to the Final Four. So I think Duke's a better team. They're still a little annoyed that they lost that game at home. They felt like they maybe dishonored Coach K a little bit. So that's going to be clearly on their mind. And I like them to take revenge on North Carolina. And Kansas and Villanova, I go with the experience here. Villanova is a team that generally shows up in the big games of late. Bill Shelf kind of struggles a little bit in big-time games. He's a great coach, but you're going to say the same thing at Coach K at one time. So I like Villanova in that game, and then we get to see a Duke-Villanova national final.
And who you like in that game on Monday night?
I think you got to give it to Coach K.
I think so too. I think not only I think the stars are aligning in that situation, but I also think the matchups are aligning in the situation as well for a lot of the reasons.
It just seems like it's bound to work out.
Exactly.
I mean, you saw some things like when Pittsburgh Steelers won their final, Jerome Bettis ended up winning a championship. Just sometimes those things work out weird.
Exactly.
That's the way it's going to happen. Couldn't happen any other way for Coach K. A great coach, a great guy, and someone who's really deserved and earned his spot in college basketball.
That's exactly right, and really well respected not only in the college game but the pro game as well with this experience with Team USA.
Coached on his dream team.
That's exactly right. Well, coming up next here on Overtime, we'll dip into some football. Bama held their pro day today. We'll also talk a little bit about the upcoming draft in the NFL. Overtime rules next. Excellent.